Um, so yeah, I was going to talk a bit about attention and sort of, as Vivian said, like picking up from where we had kind of talked was it last week or 2 weeks ago, about kind of how attention could be involving both model free and model based signals. Um, and so what I my kind of aim was to kind of work through some sort of concrete scenarios and think about at least an approach we could take, because Scott and I are both going to be working on this soon. So Scott working on the model free side, myself on the model based side, and so it'd be useful to actually like think through some concrete scenarios. It may be that we kind of change our thinking as we go, but at least it kind of gives us something to kind of work on. Um, and so I thought it'd be helpful to kind of talk some about some definitions or like at least assumptions at the outset. So this ties into what Vivian had shown before, where at least for now we're going to kind of treat attention as a different structure from target poses. So if you remember, we have target poses that we had for a while from learning modules that would say, okay, I want to go to this location in space. Then we added target poses from sensor module just saying, oh, there's something really interesting here. We should look at that. But attention, for now, we want to kind of think of it as more of an area, which is a constraint. So it's basically saying it's going to influence what target poses are acted on, um, rather than these being the same thing. Um,
And maybe, yeah, in biology, a possible way to map it could be that target pose is more like the layer 5 output to motor regions versus attention is maybe more, I don't know, that's less clear, but potentially layer 6A to thalamus or something like that. I don't know.
yeah,
It
or
seems
like
like
a
attention has to be something that's a group effort, right? Lots of columns that
Yeah.
contribute to it.
right. Um, but yeah, but that definitely we want attention to exist in a shared space, so that can be both influenced by columns and sensory inputs. And just for clarity, kind of salience is something that can capture and inform attention, but it's not the same thing as attention. Um,
Mm.
and so then getting to kind of the scenarios. So we already have saliency maps thanks to the work that Scott's recently done. And so one thing we've been talking about is how can we sort of derive like a model-free attention region that will be useful for recognizing an object before we move on. Um, and one way we've been thinking about that is depending on where, uh, for now, if we just say where the sensor is, that kind of defines a seed that using that kind of salience, or maybe some other kind of model-free, feature input, um, does a kind of a flood filling algorithm, if that means anything, to kind of say, okay, all of this sort of neighborhood seems to be a thing. Of course, I'm a model-free system. I can't say for sure that this is one object, but at least this kind of neighborhood of stuff seems to be one thing. Maybe pay attention to this area. Um, but depending on where we are, where our kind of fovea, again for now, just say fovea is fixated, that will be a different seed going into that sort of feature or salience map, and so we'll get a different region selected. Um, and if it's helpful, you can kind of think of like the magic wand tool in Photoshop or the bucket tool in for like old school paint applications, where kind of depending on where you select in the image, you'd get a different contiguous region selected as like, oh yeah, this is all kind of the same color, for example. Um, but um, but as we've kind of talked about this, one thing that's nice is unlike a lot of kind of sort of object proposal schemes, like model free object proposal things, we don't really need to do segmentation. Segmentation generally means like you take a whole image and you divide it up into a bunch of blobs. And you say, here's a blob, here's a blob, here's a blob, and maybe these are different objects. But actually, what we think we only need to do is just say, okay, what is the kind of object that I'm currently looking at? And then, as I'll get into, this will interact with other parts of the system to enable us to kind of move on and recognize other objects.
So
Um,
if I'm
So
in,
is this
Is this based on where I'm looking, like where the phobia is, or is it based on the saliency
Right.
of like the whole image?
So the starting point of the seed is based on where you're looking. I'll get to covert attention in a second. But yeah, the location where you're looking, but then that's kind of being fed into this wider uh, field of view. Let's say this is being extracted in superior colliculus.
Mhm.
So
Then
we're
you
kind
do
of telling
saliency on that.
superior colliculus, uh, I'm here according to your salience map. Like what's the space that I should be now attending to?
Okay.
And yeah, this is just showing different examples of, okay, we're here. So now kind of this whole logo region seems interesting here. Maybe the rim kind of pops out. But if we go in a more kind of nondescript area, then maybe this whole kind of mug would be sufficiently like, okay, yeah, that's interesting. And so you can see how based on where we're fixating at a given time, you might end up with kind of a hierarchy of like smaller objects versus larger objects. Um,
But
Yes,
yeah,
um,
yeah. If you want to take a look at some of the algorithms that I've tried, we could do that as well.
cool.
Have
oh
like
yeah,
Yeah, that could
yeah,
be interesting.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
have an
maybe.
interactive thing here. So
Okay, yeah.
You implemented the bucket
Yeah,
tool from Paint?
actually, if you've
yeah,
got some of
let's
that
take a look.
now, that could be interesting.
Oops.
It's like, let me open up MS Paint here.
Yeah, that was a nice throwback, yes. But it's a really good analogy.
Right.
So float fill is not
Oh,
going to work for us.
okay.
It's just too, it's too selective. Like you
Well,
hit the white
I mean, it
thing and it's
depends
just,
on the features, I guess, that it's getting in. But
yeah. I
right.
mean, if I hit like the letter D, it's just going to try to fill that letter D. It's too kind of,
But is that based on color or what?
yes. If you try to use it on the salience map, it's not really much
Doing
better.
anything?
Yeah.
Okay.
But the nice thing is, we do have other options. Grab cut is pretty good. So, if we continue saccading along, at least we're going to continue staying within regions that are good.
What happens if you select the marble with grab cut?
So that's not as good, but then
It seems to just
because
kind
we've
of
got
select a
this,
circle of different sizes.
yes, because it kind of seeds with a circle, but then there's this other one that, sorry, not this one. Slick Merge. Slick Merge is pretty good. This is the one that was made by Vocus 2 people. So we can kind of like stay within our, by the way, there's lots of parameters to play with here, so we could try to, tune a little bit better, but at least when we're on the marble, we're kind of more or less filling the marble.
Super
Um,
pixels.
I
Oh.
don't know. It's,
Well, yeah, cool that you got this together already. It's nice to see. Yeah, it'd be interesting. Maybe after this, we can talk about like things we can tweak because it feels like, yeah, both the feature inputs to this and like just things like, I don't know, if you kind of do like Gaussian blurring
mhm.
of some of these things, you could imagine that sort of smoothing over some of this detail, or even like you were talking about, I think the other day, like different feature maps in a hierarchy. Um,
Yeah, there's definitely things we could play with here.
We're just talking about bottoms up model free
right.
attention windows, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
It seems like this is like the fill is sort of like in going outward. It almost feels to me like it's sort of a lot of the times it's the opposite. You can imagine I have like a, a circle around this whole image, and I'm just going to contract the circle, and the circle stops. It hits edges and it stops contracting at that point. It's like you're shrink wrapping the thing. you know it almost feels like you start large and you narrow down until you've encompassed something, as opposed to this fill is going outward. It's like starting at some point and moving outward.
Yeah,
So
that's
if I
a good
imagine,
Mm.
point. Because that could capture the boundaries of objects well. Like
yeah,
it's probably easier to find the outlines of objects, especially based on depth values, than to start from the inside and maybe randomly hit other features like the lettering.
Yeah.
I mean, if it just feels that way, it feels like start large and then narrow down. And it's the outer boundaries of things which seem to be more than so the important parts.
Well, we could probably emulate that or approximate it with a spreading out if we did a lot of blurring.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right.
I haven't come across any algorithms that work in that sort of out in
There
yet,
are
but
algorithms that where you draw a line around something and then it figures out what to select in there.
yeah.
It kind of reminds me of the magnet for the Photoshop analogies, the magnetic lasso tool.
Yeah, I was gonna
Um,
say it's a bit like that where you draw around and it snaps onto the boundaries of the object.
Right.
So with any of
and it
these,
also
like
makes
the
me
real
think.
challenge is that we're trying to get logos on objects. So like most of these kind of techniques are not really designed for nested type data.
Yeah,
You know,
but again, I think to our advantage is that we only care about one object at any given point in time, because I think a lot of these were developed in a situation where you wanted to segment the whole image to a bunch of different objects.
these ones are not,
No?
or
Okay.
that's I chose the algorithms that are active fixation based. So
Oh,
they,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah. And GradCut is primarily foreground background. It's not supposed to get like multiple segments technically.
Yeah. Right.
Um, but I mean, if we want to select by object ID, like that will have to be a feature. So I can only speak for GradCut because that's the only one that I really know. um, is that you start from a seed and then you keep adding surrounding pixels based on the feature similarity. In this case by color, so if you click on the white one, it will try to flood fill the white one basically. But if that feature is object ID, then we can try to flood fill by the same object ID. So we'll try to include those pixels. So in that case, I can, but that also requires us knowing that, that is it's kind of a chicken and egg problem, right? Like we are trying to use a segmentation to get like a proto object, but then it requires an object ID to do the segmentation.
Right.
Yeah, but there's probably also, I mean, yeah. So I guess I'll be interested in an algorithm that can be a little bit flexible in what kind of features it will consider for similarity, not just color, because
Right.
we have many features we can work with.
Mhm.
Yeah, and even like a
Yeah,
combination of those.
yeah.
So
Yeah, the slick
what
and
if
merge, how complex is that? Was this, you said this was the Vocus 2 one? Or like
It's
Vocus 2 people?
like 80 lines of code. Yeah.
Because yeah, that seems to work pretty well.
Yeah, it's
well
a bit,
the
I think it's kind of got a grab cutty kind of theory behind it, but it's a bit more, I don't fully understand it, to be honest.
for the outside moving in one interesting part of that could be that learning modules could determine the general size of the object we currently want to recognize. Like we want to focus on the child object or on the parent object. And then you could basically initialize a circle of that size and narrow in until you hit a significant edge in the features. So you narrow it until you hit that edge of the white to marble transition in this example. And then if you wanted to have a smaller object, you would initialize a smaller circle. It would, for example, just go around the logo mark and narrow in until it hits those edges. Or you do an even larger circle and it just narrows in until it hits the edges of the square. It could be a way to, yeah, basically do
Yeah,
this dynamic
Yeah, if
Right.
we
Yeah.
have a
what
object
size of area.
hypothesis.
Yeah.
right. I think for slick and
Um,
merge, like I think you can try to merge it so that the region is approximately the size that we want, for the model, right?
Yeah. I'm not
And it
sure.
was yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, it seems like a different approach that could be worth trying because it doesn't look at feature similarity within the child object. It could just look at significant changes from outside. So like edges. So the problem with this logo is that there are very different features within that child object that we want to isolate. So
hmm
it's hard to have
Is
that
there
all
any,
be the same region.
when you look at this logo, I mean, it's interesting. I clearly attend to the four components of it: the graphic, the three words. I mean, I go back and forth between them. I don't know if I don't know if I ever feel like I'm attending to the white rectangle. I mean, it's interesting. Uh, maybe I do. I don't know. But I clearly jump back and forth quickly. You know, your brain is constantly just it's very rapidly changing its attentional focus. And I mentioned the words because it's not like a circular thing that comes in. It's like somehow my brain sort of knows that that word thousand has sort of a boundary of white around it, and it attends to the sort of the area where it's not a circle that's snapped to that. It's like a rectangle that fits that word thousand. I'm just
Yeah.
brainstorming here. It's clearly not just circular attentional areas. It does feel like
Oh
I'm
yeah, I
using
didn't
outer
mean that it stays a circle. I meant you start as a circle and then each point on the circle narrows in until it hits an edge.
right,
So then it becomes the shape.
right. But in the word of like a thousand, if I had the circle around thousand, I might also include the word brains in it, and so
Yeah.
I might capture that. Um, what it feels like just like somehow seems as intuitive. My brain knows that there's the word thousand, even if I didn't recognize the word. That's seems to be a separate object than the brains and the word
Mm.
project. So it's not just like it's like the boundary is determining where I start my I don't know start my attentional area.
Yeah, I have some
Somehow
more stuff on how this could maybe interact with model-based attention that I can also go through.
Do you want
but
to
none of
return
that was model based so far, right? Even I'd say the words
Right.
I don't need to necessarily know what the words mean. It's like the logo. The word doesn't necessarily mean anything, and I might not have recognized it. I do, but
Right. But yeah,
It
no,
feels like
thanks,
when
Scott.
you narrow in
That's
on the
cool to see.
word thousands, it's like the reason brains is also popping out is because they're the same color. Like you're somehow
I don't
But
know.
I guess
priming.
Jeff, you're saying you feel like you just narrow in on thousand without at the
I
exclusion of brains.
right. It feels to
Mm,
me, even if it was written in some foreign language, or those are all graphics, I would pick those four separate things to look at.
mhm.
Um, and then I
Yeah,
might
it definitely feels like
within one I
blurring
could
is part of this. Like
uh,
whether we do the outside in or inside out, it feels like
well you're
selective
blurring
blurring
or
at,
just
at different frequencies.
taking lower frequency
Exactly, as in like a
features,
word is just like a chunk of
right?
purple
Somehow,
because
right,
it's like closely clustered letters.
right.
Um,
And again, it doesn't have to be letters. It could be anything. It just doesn't really matter. But that's something that's occupying that space there would be something I'd attend to. And then, of course, if I didn't recognize it, I would attend to smaller pieces. I would try to pick out the
right,
individual letters. Even if I didn't recognize them as letters, I would try to pick them out. Say, what is that? What is that? What is that? Like when I look at the icon of the logo, I might focus on the little circle in the middle because that's isolated first. And it's okay, there's a circle. And then I don't know, you just look at individual pieces of it, trying to figure out what it is.
Yeah, I mean,
Anyway,
I think it's definitely in the brain, it's more complex than like thought filler or something. Because
yeah.
we have all these Gestalt principles of how we group things together into one. Like if you have like proximity is one, which might be solved with blur, but then there's also things that move together. There's things that look the same, like you have a bunch of circles and a bunch of squares. You group those together. Um, so
right.
yeah, there are all these different like continuity of lines. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I don't know. Maybe someone developed a mechanism that uses these Gestalt principles. I don't know.
Gestalt,
Well,
seg. Yeah, maybe see if
somewhat,
there's an algorithm.
clearly the movement thing is something that's it's almost like different, right? A different mechanism, almost like so. If there's, I keep thinking about if I'm looking into a trees and there's a bunch of moving things moving in the same direction, even though they're not connected, I will attend to the entire area of the movement. Like I'm going to attend to all the moving things, the area that's occupied all the moving things, even though they're not contiguous and there's a bunch of other stuff in between. It's like it's the movement parts just pop out and define some set of features that has to be so coordinated movements would somehow define an attention area. That may be a
Yeah.
totally different mechanism than, probably is then.
Yeah. Like just some examples here, like the similarity, proximity, continuity, even though there are spaces in between. Uh,
Hmm.
and yeah, I don't know if there's some other ones here. Figure ground, I guess. So some of them might be solved just by blurring, like especially proximity and continuity, but
Yeah.
others, yeah, there's common fate, that's the movement one. Uh, symmetry?
It's, it's fun just to look at it. Look at the figure ground one, the two faces in the vase in the upper left there. It's funny when I
Yeah,
look at that, if I see the vase, I'm clearly attending to the entire vase. But if I look at a face, I can only attend to the left face or the right face at once. It's like a bump back and forth between them. I mean, you could try to see
yeah.
two faces at once, but that's your first attempt is to say, oh, there's a left face, oh, there's a right face, oh, there's a whole vase. And
This one should work with the flat fill.
yeah.
Yeah, and I guess a certain amount of that is kind of model based as well.
Right,
Well,
yeah,
I don't know if it would work on fun, but if you look at those two faces, when I tend to the face, I really don't want to look at all the dark blue in the place, right? I'm to see the face, I have to be looking at the dark. I have to like pick out just a slice of that blue area. Um, I mean, flood fill here would you would attend to the entire blue box, the
Right.
entire
And
graphic.
shrinking magnetic lasso would also, I don't know, it would keep going until it hit, I guess, the edge of the face. Maybe that works.
I don't know. It's just weird how we do
here's
this
a
stuff.
tricky one. How do you get the cube?
Mm.
Yeah.
I didn't see it until
But
you said cube.
Oh, really?
It's,
Yeah.
I guess it's model based then.
Yeah. But yeah,
it's
anyways, I think, yeah, it'll be tough to cover everything in one algorithm, but maybe we can get a first approximation and then iterate on
Right.
it.
Right. Yeah, let me yeah, so some of this is kind of assuming we're using kind of a seed based thing, like we click on a point, whether it's flood fill or something else. But yeah, some of this can maybe be adapted if we also want to try a more shrinking one. But yeah, just kind of continuing on before that, intuitively the kind of initial seed location can also be defined without moving sensors, for example, from a model-based signal. And so um, that can, of course, enable covert attention. So like if your focus is actually here, but then you attend here, you could still apply the kind of same sort of seed expanding algorithm. Um, and it feels like something like this is necessary, not just because like covert attention in vision is maybe a sort of edge case, but if you're attending to a region of your skin, like your shoulder or whatever, of course you're not kind of moving anything at that point in time. So a kind of similar principle would need to apply. And yeah, it's maybe not perfect, but I guess what I think would be promising of sending this kind of seed as a location is that we could still end up with a region, but the learning module doesn't need to pass a region because it feels hard to think about how at least a column would be doing that. And then this can be even better if we have multiple columns.
But
Um,
wouldn't the sensor module have to pass a region? Like whoever does the flood fill? Or are you thinking the flood fill itself happens in a different structure?
yeah, I guess that happens maybe in a different structure. That like basically where the attention exists.
And so that would be like superior colliculus or whatever actually gets visual input
Right,
and does the segmentation
right,
based on intended location. But then
right.
there's no
Yeah.
way to actually specify the size of the area or shape of the area by other people, other
Um,
learning modules or sensor modules.
with the model based, yeah, with the learning modules, not at
Yeah.
least with this, because I mean, we can do it in Monty, but at least the idea of taking, let's say, our current model and basically passing that to as like a bounding region to kind of the subcortical areas or whatever this it just feels kind of odd. But I mean, what we've talked about before is how we could have multiple learning modules. Um, but when we talked about that, we were still kind of talking about points or maybe like points with like a, I don't know, like a bit of a radius to them. But it feels like if those points were multiple seeds where we're basically saying this is all a common object. So whatever you kind of expand into, merge that, could maybe address some of the issues with, yeah, some of these filling algorithms that, if you just have one seed, maybe it's not going to do very well. But if you had multiple, and of course this is model based, so it requires some hypothesis, but these could maybe kind of bootstrap each other.
Are you thinking like there would be a strength of the seed that's based on the evidence of the hypothesis or something like that? Something like where they like collectively work together in a statistical
Yeah,
way?
no, that's an interesting point. Yeah, I hadn't thought about strength of the seed. It was more, strength of the target pose. But I think, you could have something like that where, maybe where it's like, I don't know, the tolerance for spreading or something like that is lower, like defining whether a neighbor is a neighbor or not. It could be affected by that.
And just trying to think. So the way I was thinking about the attentional space is that it's like an attentional region in a shared three-dimensional space.
Yeah.
But sensory input will be in retinal space. And so it seems like there's still some kind of intermediate step that would need to happen there.
Yeah, so this would be more kind of like using the salience or the sort of RGB / depth or like kind of convolved with depth input. So like, we would want it to be taking place in 3D space basically. And we would track it in like we'd want to track it in like a egocentric space, not sensor centric space, so that it's kind of consistent, relatively consistent over time. Like you can move your eye, and it's whatever new attention you're having is going to be tied to that shared egocentric space, not the like, retinotopic space or whatever.
And would this still work for attention in kind of imagined space? So if there's no direct sensory input, but you're just imagining a scene, you're imagining your house and attending to different things in your room,
Right.
how would that work?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that could even be like a different kind of attention. Like that could be, I don't know, like L6 feedback to another column or something like that. Kind of going to a location. Because if
I mean,
it's
would
an
it be
imagined space,
so?
then it's I mean it's all, presumably it's all kind of columnar in some sense.
Well, wouldn't there still be a full scene representation of what you're imagining?
Yeah, but that could still be taking place in a column, or maybe like hippocampus or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, all of this is, yeah, taking place in columns, but then we would still want to be able to pay attention to different parts in that scene, in that temporary scene.
Right.
So, yeah, I just feel like we're losing some nice things, but if it's just a point and not an area. But are you
Yeah, I
opposed
guess
to
this
an
would.
area just because it would be clunky to communicate, or?
Um, it's just, at least in terms of subcortical communication, it seems hard to imagine how that would happen. Like if I have a learning module that's learned a model of a mug, it seems hard to imagine how it's going to communicate that shape. Whereas I can imagine it kind of intersecting with this kind of subcortical system that kind of spreads attention by basically passing locations. And if we pass several locations, that can define an area even better.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It couldn't communicate like a fine-grained shape, but it could do like a spherical outline, like size and width or something like that.
Yeah, and then I
That
guess
would be
I mean we could do that. I guess my only concern with that then is it just becomes kind of like a sphere rather than like this could
yeah,
have the advantage that it could actually kind of conform to like a shape that again we don't know what that shape is a priori. I mean, and in between might be like okay if each one of these points has like a radius to it, then again that could maybe define like a. But then it's like okay then do those have an orientation if they're like ellipsoids or maybe they're just spheres. Um,
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I'm not married to this, but this was at least an idea for maybe how we could, yeah, kind of get regions without
yeah.
passing regions. Um,
Oh, I don't know why we have to pass regions. Why do we have to pass? I mean, if a region's defined someplace, um, imagine you take the surface of the thalamus, right? A particular formation. I'm just making this up. I don't think it's right, but it doesn't have to be passed anywhere, right? It's just like you can the different modules would project to different parts of that surface, and they would define the region. Maybe I'm
but
lost on it, you guys.
well, I guess just um, naively, those would be a point in space, like a single, like infinitesimally small point.
Well, but
We could relax
yeah,
that a bit and say, okay, now it's like a region or like a
right,
circle,
right.
a sphere of some
Well,
size.
no, no. Each point it's the point the set of points which define the region on the surface of the
But I guess the
thalamus.
question is like, okay, how large do those spheres have to be? Um, and how many of them do we need to kind of
Well, I guess
sort of tile the object that we're interested in?
uh, well, I don't know, but it doesn't seem hard. Um, I mean, obviously, if I have, I'd have to have you could have a whole bunch. I, I'm not sure. I guess even the question you're asking, how large does a sphere have to be? It seems like an odd question to me. It's like I have a bunch of I have a bunch of learning modules projecting back to something like the surface of the thalamus, and the set of them you could it'll be a bunch of points, and you have to connect those points together, but that could be done locally there. I don't know. I'm just
I guess
confused
that's
as
yeah. Maybe you could rephrase this as how do we decide to connect them? This is one way we can do that. But yeah,
well. I
think
guess the
there's lots
question
of
I was
ways.
just I was
Yeah,
I'm really kind of lost here, but a question I just picked up on is like, oh, we don't want to pass around a region. And I feel like, oh, I never felt anyone's going to pass a region around. The region will be defined physically someplace. Um, it's physically on the surface of some uh, thing, whether it's like the spirit collectors or something like that, or the thalamus or something. And so no one has to pass it around. It's just there. It's, and it constrains, does its thing.
I mean,
yeah.
but what for model-based attention, where you're using your learning modules to know where to attend to your models of scenes and objects, wouldn't you
Mm,
want to use that information of where objects are and what size they have?
yeah, I was forgetting we're talking about model based here.
Yeah.
So model based is like saying, oh, I know where the logo is on the cup. We
Yeah.
should attend to that.
Hojo, you did some. What was it? Was it bounded convex hull? I think something like that. Sorry, I'm just thinking back to
Yeah, yeah.
some algorithm you were looking at for re-anchoring or something like that. But anyways, um, yeah, I mean, you could also, and maybe this gets closer to kind of the shrinking thing we were talking about, where like you can imagine the points kind of define a sort of boundary, and it's fine if there's additional points within, but basically we take like kind of the sort of object. If you kind of created like a mesh, like if you threw a net over all these points and you kind of pulled it taut and kind of contracted it, and these points were kind of floating in space, that region defined by this net as it kind of shrunk down, that could be our region. And so in that case, we're not using um, yeah, kind of seed filling. We're just saying that okay, the learning modules are going to define the region. They're each contributing a point in space, but they can kind of define fairly complex points in space based on
Right. So you get a set of points, and then you do your shrinking circle, your shrinking
yeah,
plastic graph or whatever.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. That's some sort of algorithm but it seems doable.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I guess there's some different options with kind of similar, maybe similar outcomes. And then, yeah, just kind of then bringing us into kind of like, okay, well then what happens next? So I guess then, once the attention is defined, it would kind of upscale or downscale target poses depending on whether they fall within the region. So as a constraint, but kind of a non-absolute one. And so you can imagine like if you're
I'm lost. What is upscaling and downscaling? The attention region,
so
or
increase basically the chance that a target pose is going to be acted on. Because we have this thought that we have multiple parts of the brain that are all saying, oh, look here, oh, look here, look here, look here. And that's coming both from model free signals, and which is ultimately kind of informed by salience, and it's coming from model based signals, which is like, oh, I wonder, maybe it'd be interesting to go look at that telephone. And so, but thinking about how that could interact with attention, if you're kind of looking right here, and so your attention region, based on again this like seed filling or whatever technique, is kind of the logo. Some column might be giving you a model based target pose here, and another one over here, and then you might be getting kind of the highest salience is telling you to go over here, but there's also some salience telling you to go over here.
When you say model-based target pose, is that like? I'm sorry, I'm really lost here.
That's right. As in like attend to that location, basically.
One column is saying that.
Like move, yeah, saccade to that location. So where the tend is overloaded.
But we this is after we have an attention region, right?
Right. So we have an attention region, and
when the first thing I do is try to infer what's in the region. That would be the next thing
but
I would
I'm
do.
basically saying, how do we, given we have all these different parts of the system that all are kind of saying different things, how do we actually get that to happen?
So all of these target poses are for inferring the object. So the model-based target poses are saying, if you go here, you might get a better idea of what this object is.
But isn't the definition of the attention window that it contains the object you're trying to infer?
Well, that's what we hope.
Right. So the thing you try to do is to attend to this. You attend to this region. You say all the columns that are observing that region vote. And what do you see?
Yeah.
That's all we do at this point. And we're not paying attention to anything else. So either you could succeed at that. But at this point,
let's say we have a higher level learning module that's trying to recognize, I don't know, the mug with the logo. It might say, oh, why don't we go over here? All I'm showing here is just that this attention region is going to help us sort of filter out that noise until those signals become strong enough, which can happen either in a model-based way or a model-free way. So that we're going to do what we want to do, which is stay on the logo until it's recognized. Which, if we're voting, should be really quick. If we're not voting, we may need to spend a bit of time there. Or if we only have kind of a small set of
so to me I'm just confused. If I attend to an area and I infer it, okay, this is essentially I'm basically saying the thing I just attended to is a child of a larger object. That's almost always the case. And now after that, we might say, well, what do we do next, right?
Right.
But it's not conflicting with the original attention area. It's just say, okay, I've attended to this object. I see there's a logo. It's on this part of the mug. I might want to.
So
we need to break the attention window. Yeah.
So maybe the question
is about recognizing the child object, and so to recognize it, we can either use a lot of columns and vote within that region, or we can use one or a few columns and move within that region. And so that's what this is showing.
And basically then to what you're saying, Jeff, is so once that's happened, then basically we'd want to send a strong model-based target pose, saying like, look, I know we figured what that was, figured out what that was. We may have been attending to this point, but now we should shift attention somewhere else. And so,
Okay, but that could,
even though normally attention is saying, oh, don't go out of this region, the point is that at some point we need to be able to break that. Otherwise, we will never leave that region. We'll stay there forever.
it seems as soon as you infer something, you're done. There's no reason to stay there anymore. I mean, if you can't infer something, you might want to go dig down and take a
Right, but somehow that
area.
has to be communicated. So if we're saying that this attention region is kind of this shared subcortical thing, somehow that practically has to happen. And I feel like it will happen very naturally if a learning module says, okay, let's now go to this location. And we're naturally then going to, develop basically a new attention at that location.
But this is almost independent of what I just attended to. It's more like saying, all right, what do we do now? And we have to decide what we're going to look at next in the world.
It is independent of where.
When you shift your attention instead of the target pose?
The target pose is to shift the attention, basically to both move the fovea and define kind of the seed for the next attention.
I thought they were going to be two separate things, that we can move the attention without actually moving the sensor.
Yeah, we can, but we can also move them together, which is what we tend to do. So yeah, I guess I'm simplifying it by just writing target pose here, but it would be both. But like we wouldn't just covertly attend in most situations.
Isn't this question, like, imagine I'm looking at the world in front of me right now, and we might ask, okay, what do I tend to first? What do I tend to next? What is the overall process am I doing? Am I building a compositional model of the room, or now am I focusing on the chair and its compositional model? I mean, this is a very high level question about what is the overall process by which we decide to parse up the world in front of us, and what areas do we focus on to, we're building models of things. And so it's a broader question, like, given the world is very complicated, which parts of it do I want to focus on now, and then next and next? Isn't that basically what we're talking about?
That's part of it, yeah. And I feel like with that, I think we're generally kind of assuming for now, which I think is a reasonable assumption, that this kind of highest level goal is basically for the highest level learning module to be confident about what it's seeing, to recognize what it's seeing, which I think is an intuitive thing. Like I go into a room, I want to figure out, or anything else, I want to figure out what the heck am I looking at? I need to open my eyes. I need to look around. If there's something unusual, I need to look at that.
I don't know, but it does seem to me, it's more attractive to me to think about the even higher level problem. At any point in time, I'm in the world, and I have to decide: do I stay in where I am? Do I move? What part of the world do I explore? How deep do I go in any direction? It's like a huge tree search, right? And what general rules do I use to decide, like, oh, I'm done in this room, time to go to the next room, or I'm done looking at the table and I want to look at the chair, or I don't know. It just seems to be.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get at.
Book.
That's what I was trying to get at last week when I was talking about kind of like these, like almost like basically in an open-ended environment. Like you can do anything. So why do you decide to do anything in the first place?
What did you conclude last week? I forgot.
Well, it's I don't know if it's a conclusion, but so like there's notions of like curiosity that some have been kind of mathematically quantified, or like ways of kind of estimating that, but it feels like maybe one way of summarizing it is kind of, so there are actions that are predictable in uninteresting ways. So an object that does not move, we don't seem to really care about that much. And then there are things that are unpredictable in kind of mildly interesting ways. So if something's constantly unpredictable, like leaves moving or ocean waves or a flame or whatever, then that's kind of slightly interesting, and we might kind of stare at that for a bit. But the things that really seem to drive us are the things that are initially unpredictable, but that can be predicted once they're learned and understood. So as in, like, that's the stapler opening and closing that like, if you've never seen it before, it's like, what the heck is that? But then you start looking at it and you start noticing a pattern and you start being able to predict it. Like it feels like we get kind of a dopamine hit from
Right.
that.
Well,
And then
sometimes
that can
it's
kind of drive our
with
behavior.
curiosity is one of them. Obviously,
Yeah.
I'm walking around and I walk in a room and I say, "Oh, there's a coffee pot. That makes me want to have some coffee," or
Yeah.
or
And then
there's
of course
you
there's
get
like base kind of hunger and sleep and stuff like
well, or
that.
you want to be entertained. Oh, I'll pick up my phone and play a word game. I see that. It makes me want to do that. Or
But it's interesting,
you'll
like what is it about a word game that's interesting? Because if you open up the word game and
there's some
every
reward.
time the letters were like totally random and the outcome of the game was totally random, like
No,
that
what's
would not be interesting at all.
all these things I
It's
think have some reward signal to them, right? There's
but where
some
does the reward signal come from? Because the reward signal doesn't magically give us. I mean,
right,
some of
right,
it may be
right,
evolutionary, like
right.
social hierarchy, whatever. But I think there is an intuitive, or like there is a reward to understanding things that can be understood, and we kind of lose interest when we're not able to understand them at all. Um,
Right.
I mean, that happens also if you're trying to learn something new and it's just too complicated. Then you kind of it's you quickly just give up because it's like,
Sometimes
oh, but
sometimes
if you're in
reward
that state of
signals
flow, it's like,
sometimes
yeah,
reward signals can be like inherent, like, oh, eating food makes you feel good, right? Oh, there's a
right,
cookie on the counter. Go and pick that up. Or I'll see something and say, oh, let me start this activity because I get some enjoyment from it for some reason. I don't know. Um,
right.
right. Um,
Um,
I
but
don't think
anyways,
it's just,
and
it's
yeah,
exploring and curiosity is part of it. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting question. I mean, these are sort of policies that really impact what the overall system is going to be doing in the world.
yeah,
We
and
don't,
part of the reason I brought it up was because we've talked a few times recently about how maybe in the medium to long term it'd be interesting to look at Arc AGI3. And one of the cool things about this challenge is there are no kind of instructions and there is no explicit reward. Um, so the system somehow just has to decide, okay, this is going to be an interesting thing to try. And in an open-ended environment, that it's quite an interesting problem. Like how do you kind of define that in the first place and kind of naturally extract that? Um,
mm, I know some of the, games have some way of getting your dopamine released. I don't know. Uh, with
yeah,
RKGI, do you actually maybe you have some prior knowledge about games and that that you expect that there's a point where you get some reward for something, and you're trying to seek that out. I remember playing the game Myst. Do you remember the game Myst? It was a long time ago.
I didn't play it, but I know of it. Yeah,
You explore an island. I found it pretty boring because there wasn't enough reward going on. It was just exploring most of the time. It was like some people loved it. But it was like, okay, I can spend my time wandering around this island. Why don't I just do it in real life? Why am I doing it online? I'm not getting my dopamine release from this. Um, all right.
but
Well,
yeah,
I
I
don't know.
mean, yeah.
I'm just trying to understand this better.
Right. But yeah, but I guess the way I've been thinking about it is like at the very highest level, we have these, goals that are, yeah, derived from whether you want to call it curiosity or empowerment or whatever, something that kind of tends to drive humans like innate tendency to kind of explore the world and test it. And then you have like innate things like hunger and protecting yourself from pain and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Those are kind of the highest level goals. Those eventually filter down into simpler goals like I need to recognize what is around me because if I don't know what's around me, I don't know how do I know how to act in the world? How do I know if something's dangerous? How do I know if something's interesting? So I guess what we're talking about here is kind of like how can we enable those lower level ones, and then, but yeah, we do also need to figure out, I guess, the higher ones.
Seems
Um,
like the lower ones, a lot of it's just driven, you say curiosity, but it's also driven by learning. I basically you could phrase it that way. You could say, "Hey, I see something I don't know. I want to learn what it is." Until I say, "Oh, I know what it is," and now we go on. And its novelty disappears after a while. Um, but anytime I see something that's new, I want to understand it.
yeah,
And
yeah.
and
What I
then
think is interesting is like I think it's becoming clear how we can actually quantify that in the learning modules with prediction error. which I just think is interesting because it's like that makes it more tangible. That's like, okay, we can actually say, oh, this learning module is now going to be kind of interested because it's getting this higher prediction error, but now the prediction error is going down because it's learning or whatever. And then
I guess
yeah,
just going back to
almost done on this.
the second part of the figure, still not clear on why we need to send a target pose to move the attentional area. Wouldn't we just want to move the attentional area and then send target poses again? Like, why do we need to send a especially strong target pose instead of changing the attentional area if those are two separate concepts?
We just go from attention area to attention area.
Yeah, right. Yeah, like the learning
right.
module would just say now attend here, now attend here. And then the
Yeah.
target poses are independent of that. They're just gated by the attentional area.
Yeah. Yeah, we could do. Yeah. Yeah. So basically send this first and then do the what you call it? The target pose.
Yeah, or you can send them at the same time, but then when you apply them, which target pose is selected.
It shouldn't be gated, right?
Yeah, it's gated by the attentional area, but basically you can attend to different areas independent of where you actually look at.
Yeah, I think what was I thinking about? I guess I was thinking about it in terms of I guess somehow we just need to decide like at what point is it going to break the like because if we're going outside of this attended region, like the whole point of this is attended region is to tell us not to, in something like don't attend out of here.
Yeah, basically when you have low prediction error, you recognize the object, so then you're gonna shift your attention to something else.
Yeah. Yeah. So then,
What if maybe make a radical proposal? Maybe it's not radical. What if there's never a target pose? There's always an attention area. That's all you ever get. The system only attends the area, attend. I'm trying to.
Someone else decides kind of
to
actually move to there.
Well, there's two things. You say attend. When you have attended area, who's ever observing in that attended area will try to infer what's there. And then often we want to move some things there because they have higher acuity. So we'll want to move our fingers there, or move our phobia there. But one could just break the system down as like, I'm never really going to a point. I'm always attending to an area. I'm throwing this idea out to see if it sticks. Like it's just always the world. All you ever do is attend to areas, one after another, and then after that, we have to infer what's in that area, and who's ever observing there will do it. But we can also move some sensors into that area to figure out what it is if we need to. They're sort of separate things. You know what I'm saying?
So how would you move a sensor within the area? Like, let's say you are attending to the mug and you want to recognize the mug. How would you say now go to the handle to distinguish it from a cylinder?
I would attend to all I'm saying is that a couple of things. First of all, we talked about a single learning module, a single column, but let's assume there's never the case. There's always multiple ones. And therefore there's always an attended area where defined by multiple columns or multiple columns come in it. So let me go back. So if I were to just start with that as a premise, I recognize the mug. I tend to the whole area of the mug. I then will tend to a sub area of the mug and a sub area of that, or another sub area. So now I lost your question, Vivian.
Just like how you attend to different points within that attended area. Like I'm attending to your face.
Why do I need to
attend
to different? Why would I need to attend to different areas? If I'm attending different areas, I'm essentially. Well, I don't make a pose. I can attend to smaller areas, the attention areas, but it's always an area. It's never a point, right? It's never a target point. It's always an area. So I can do your face and then your eye and your nose.
Yeah, I agree. The attention is always an area, but it seems like I fixate on specific locations. So like it doesn't feel like I'm shifting my attention between your eyes, mouth, and nose all the time as I look on my screen. I'm attending to your face, and then saccading within that attended area.
Is that true?
I mean, that's how it feels like to me. Like, I don't feel like I'm
Mm.
attending to the subcomponents of everyone's face.
Well, clearly there are times you do that, right? There are times when I look at someone and I'll, and I will be attending to different parts. And you're saying there's other times when I might be looking at the face and my eyes are moving, but I'm not changing my attentional area.
Yeah, like the columns, all of the columns that are on the face keep voting with each other, but I'm moving my fixation point to get some more samples within that area.
Well, you wouldn't be getting more samples. You'd be getting higher resolution samples. You'd be changing which sensors
Yeah,
are in the intended area.
right. Like I don't stop voting on the face. I just get different samples within that face by moving around.
All right. Again, I would try to. I'm this brainstorming here. I would try to separate these into two separate things. You have your intended area, and then you have a separate question of what sensors are I'm using to infer what's in that intended area.
Yeah.
And they could be separate mechanisms, right? Once I've attended this, I could say, oh, well, my eyes are there, but maybe, why would I move my eyes around? Well, if I move my eyes around and I'm not attending to different things, right? I'm not sure I agree with that, but if I'm not, um, then I'm basically, I guess I'd only do that, it seems, because I have some sensors that have higher resolution than others. I don't know why I would do that otherwise. If I had a whole bunch of same resolution sensors, there'd be no point in moving them around. They're all observing, they all have the same model, they're all observing it. Uh,
Yeah, probably there wouldn't be a point in that case, but since we do need to do it, yeah, it just seems like there's two separate things. One is about an area you tend to, and the other one is where you move your sensors to. And they don't always necessarily need to be the same. And you can also move your sensors within an attended area and keep voting on the entire object in that area.
right, right. Well, okay, but again, if I can separate them out as two separate processes, and then you say, okay, I have an intended area, whoever's there is going to infer. And then as a separate process, you can say, should we move some other sensors into this area that have high resolution or different modalities or something like that? That
Yeah,
seems like
so
a
that's
step,
kind of what we're doing with the attended region and then the target pose.
but it's me that the target pose is kind of like if we had a vision sensor that had all the like a V1 equivalent and all the columns had the same resolution and the same models, there'd be no point in moving the eyes around. You would gain nothing from it. Um, you only gain something by this if you're not attending to a subset of the face. You're only going to gain something by moving a high resolution sensor into the some part of this region.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, if we have all high resolution all across the object and we have perfect voting on pose, then I agree
right.
there's no sense in moving, but not at least in the
Yeah,
current
that's kind
setup
of
we
almost the
don't, and in like on the retina
So
we
well, and
don't.
of course, like almost the definition of a sensory motor system is going to be that it's exploring a world where it has a finite access to sensory information. Like,
right, right. But I'm also, I'm still puzzling on the fact that when I look at someone's face and they, go between their eyes and nose and mouth, am I certain I'm not attending to those areas? And I might be. I would certainly, let's say V2 would be looking at the face, but V1 might be attending to the different components. Would I be aware of that? Um,
I mean,
if
I
it's
feel like if
happening
I'm
very quickly?
attending to someone's eye, then I move within the eye, still or if I'm attending to someone's nose, like as soon as you narrow your attention to the child object, you can still keep moving on that child object.
right.
You're not saying
Yeah.
you can't attend to the specific parts of the face, or you wouldn't ever, but yeah.
Well, I think it's a very interesting question about when you're moving around within the attended area. What are you really accomplishing, and are you not doing sub-attention? Um, um, It's not clear to me. It seems to me if I go from eye to eye to nose to mouth, I really might be attending to those components one at a time.
I mean, it feels like, yeah,
but
it seems unrealistic that you need to do the sub-attention to everything that you look at, or every point you look at, because, yeah, I mean, imagine kind of the more complex attention that you do every day when, like, you try to write an email on your laptop or whatever. Like, your
well,
attention is like on very high-level things and
okay.
not on the different points you're looking at.
That's a different type of attention.
Well, I
Maybe.
mean, I thought it'd be like you can only attend to one thing at a time, whether it doesn't matter whether it's in physical space or mental space.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, it doesn't, this idea of the thing I first started up with saying is like, what if we always are tending to a region? Always. And maybe I should rephrase it. Maybe there's always a region defined. There's always a region defined at which input is restricted. I can imagine a attention window that is applied to some regions, but not to all regions, or you're only aware of it when it reaches the hippocampal complex or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when meditating, you kind of try and deliberately sometimes like attend to sort of all of your sort of cloud of sensation at once. You try and like deliberately avoid filtering out.
Interesting. I don't know how that works. Never worked for me, but
but
it's like
I think
don't pay attention to the detail. The first thing you have to do is how do you not pay attention to the details?
Right.
Like coma.
But I think what's interesting about it is it's kind of focusing on the sensations in a sort of model-free cloud, as a sort of model-free cloud helps. So that the more you get stuck in your models, the more sort of the attention narrows, and it's like, oh, that's the sound of a car horn,
right,
and that's the sound of someone talking. But if you're just kind of like, there's just a cloud of like skin sensation and noises, you can kind of attend to, or at least it feels
maybe what
subjectively like you're kind of attending to a lot of it all at once.
Maybe what you're doing is you're rapidly attending to lots of little things and avoiding large models. I hear a voice, I hear a sound, I hear this, I hear that. I don't know. You could do it all at once. I just thought I threw it out there. I still think it's a worthy thing to consider, is the idea that there's always an attention window, and it's always there's every moment there might be one, and whether we're consciously aware of it or not, it's a separate question. Whether it applies to everything, I don't know, but it feels to me like we're used to, as I mentioned recently, we're used to having these we're thinking about a single learning module, but in reality, there's lots of them all the time, and they would, it always begs the question like, oh, what pose, what target pose am I going for? Like, well, if I have a bunch of learning modules, it can't be a single pose. They're all looking at different places, right? So it's like, it sort of begs the question, what does it mean to have a target pose? A target pose would be an attention for one column, something like that. But if there's always multiple columns, multiple learning modules, it seems like even the idea of a target pose is kind of questionable. Like who gets to decide?
I guess that's the idea that they compete, and they compete, and then they're kind of constrained to be generally within the attention area, and then we need to shift attention in order to.
Right, but there wouldn't be a single target pose, then, would there? I mean,
not output from learning modules. There'd be one that is acted on at least by a particular motor system, or like the eye can only move to one location, so there's only one target pose that can ultimately.
Well, that's not really true. The eye has one position, but the columns in the eye or the columns in B1 have many locations. Tristan, what do you want? You have your hand up.
Jeff, what are the corticospinal monosynaptic neurons doing if there is no target pose?
Well, okay, that's out of the blue question. All the axons that come out of the brain that move muscles, none of them project to muscles directly. They always project to something else, which which controls movement. And so I don't necessarily think of them as a pose, right? You might say grasp, or you know, you even that, like, where's my hand? If I said I want to move my hand someplace, there's no point that represents my hand. My hand is a bunch of things that I want in multiple positions. So there's no target, even something like that. There's no target pose for a hand. There isn't a single point which can represent that. So I'm not sure I'm getting at your question, Tristan,
Well,
but
I mean,
it,
don't primates have a monosynaptic neuron that synapses directly onto the motor neuron? And it's primates exclusively, from the neocortex down onto
I'm
the
not
motor
sure.
neuron.
I'm not sure which you were referring to there, but all parts of the cortex of a layer 5 cell, and some of them project to the spinal cord, and some of them project to neurons in the spinal cord, but not to muscles directly. But they don't. It's not. It does. There's no single synapse coming. An action potential coming out of the cortex leads to a action. An action potential reaching a muscle cell. That doesn't happen. It always invokes a network of cells that then do something.
Yeah, what I was
Um,
saying is onto motor neuron. They synapse onto the motor neurons, right? And isn't the theory that primates have more of those because that gives us fine-grained motor control over our fingers and other things?
I don't know about that theory. I haven't read
Okay.
about that,
Yeah, I mean,
but I
in
can
general, I
imagine.
think a lot of animals, like a surprising number of sophisticated mammals, don't have a motor cortex even. Um, like it seems like, which kind of fits with the whole point that like motor cortex clearly isn't the be all and end all of motor. It's more like
Right.
a refinement.
Well,
Yeah,
if
but I
we
guess
just
just to what you were just saying, like I think that's what the other nice thing about target poses is, yeah, you can have competitions that you only have one. You can also have multiple target poses if they're not conflicting. So I don't know. You could just imagine with the hand, like maybe you have the columns controlling the fingers are defining target poses for that, but then the column controlling the wrist is kind of defining, kind of more modeling the wrist is determining that. So it could kind of orchestrate, but a lot of that would be independent of attention, which is more kind of like this is the space that we're going to focus on.
I guess I don't want to beat this up. I mean, he had a nice presentation today. I just threw out the idea, and I think it's a valid idea to think about. Is that is that we have a general problem of how multiple columns work together all the time. How do they
Right.
input behavior together, right? And it's not like every column has an idea what it wants to do in the world and it competes with all the other columns. Somehow they work together to achieve things in complex arrangements. And so the idea, it's just appealing to me to think about attention is, that that um that we have this attention window, and things want to move within that window, and the window is not defined by a single point. And so I don't know, it's just our hands not defined by a single point. So I'm just
Yeah,
trying to
I
think,
think
like,
I think we maybe we're all in
Yeah,
agreement on that.
yeah, just to clarify, how does this, yeah, differ from what Niels showed?
well,
So
you were
like
focusing
that
on this
also,
target pose, like we had an attention window and now we have a target pose, and we do the target pose and then never figure out the new attention window. And
but
I'm thinking,
Yeah,
there's
like,
still
what if
I
it
think the way
goes?
there's
Vivian worded it was clear. It's basically it's more yeah, I was entangling it. It's more that we have the sort of attention seed. We have some way of defining the region. We talked about various ways that could work. Um, but basically, however we're defining that attention region, that is going to shift. And then within that attention region, we can also have somewhere that we now say we actually want to move here. We want to move our sensors. So that's the target pose. But the
I'm
important thing
not.
is the attention that's shifting around.
I guess I'm still not 100% on board with that idea. Um, uh,
but so in terms of the attention, I mean, there is always an attentional area, and that attentional area can move around and be larger and smaller and move on to different
mhm.
objects. Is that consistent with how you were
Right.
thinking
There's
of it?
always an attention area, and the attention area moves, and then we
Yeah.
attend. And I think that's the model I like. Whereas it's area all the time. And now the question is, if I move a sensor within an attended area, what's the benefit of that? Why am I doing that? I mean, the only reason, the upfront reason is, well, it'll help me infer better, right? And but it would be not clear that's model based at that time, because if it's model based, if I'm going to attend to a component of an object, oh, well, like what's that word? Attend to that word. Well, then I think I'd be attending to that word. So I kind of, I think, yeah.
I mean, it doesn't have to be model-based. The model-based would be more like, I have a hypothesis of what this could be. Now I'm going to go here and test that hypothesis, but it can also be model-free, saliency. But basically the idea is that the attended area region that we always have has kind of three functions. One is it gates which columns vote with each other. Two, it gates the sensory columns, sensory inputs. So like you get sensory input from that attended area. And
Those are kind
three,
of tied together. They're tied together, right? I mean, those are
right, yeah,
one and
they're
the
tied
same.
together. Although sometimes we talked about that even columns that are currently not in the attended area could get the object ID through lateral
Well,
connections. But
they
yeah,
need to we need to do that, right?
yeah. But so yeah, that's the
But
detail. But
they're
then
not voting.
yeah, yeah, right. And then the third one would be that we want to move within the attended area, and that's I guess the questionable one that you're questioning.
I'm not questioning that, right? Uh, there are reasons to move sensors into the attended area that
Yeah.
aren't in the attended area, and those reasons are to do better inference. But if I'm now going to, that's why I see something moving in the bushes, I turn my eyes to look at it. I move my forward to the area. Um, But it feels to me now that if I'm going to attend to, it feels like I'm going to like move my phobia to a subset of that area. Then it feels like I'm then now attending to a smaller subset of that. Like, oh, maybe that was the head over there, and there's a tail over there. Or when I look at your face, um, if I move from eye to nose to mouth, I'm not. It's not clear to me.
Maybe I don't know if part of it comes down
If, if,
to like
if it's model, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say, we all talked about how we can attend to two levels at any given point in time. So I don't know if you're looking at a face, the low level column might be modeling the eye. The high level model column is modeling the face. That's the one that gives that
Well, right.
the
That
high
would
level
make
column that
sense
gives
to
us
me.
the subjective stability of like even as my eyes are moving, I'm still looking at X person's face.
Right.
Um, but I guess tying that into this conversation, like it's almost like maybe there's not strictly one level of attention, or I don't know.
Well, that might be right. I mean, it does feel like,
Like maybe attention is kind of
if I'm
hierarchical.
learn a parent-child relationship, well, column one has to be representing the entire parent, and the region two has to represent the child. And presumably they'd both have attention areas, right? I don't know how to reconcile that with what we said earlier, but clearly I can't. It feels like I have to have one thing representing, to form the parent-child relationship. Like I have two different representations of different sizes going on. And I'm not sure, it kind of breaks the whole idea of, oh, well, there's one attended area. What the hell? I don't know.
Right.
Um, when I'm doing that, it's like, I don't know. It's a little confusing.
Yeah, in terms of so I had a couple more figures, but I think what you call it, just because yeah, I might have to go soon. I can post those on Slack, and then we can just kind of discuss them there. It's nothing. It's just some kind of minor follow-up things. And maybe the one to kind of mention is just that one thing I wanted to think about was kind of how but I haven't gone around to, but I'm just mentioning it now because maybe I'll discuss later, and then if other people have interesting thoughts as well. But basically, how does kind of model-based attention interact with salience? And so that's the kind of like, if you're sat in your house and you think your partner's upstairs, um, and you're just working on your computer and you kind of hear a sound upstairs, you just kind of ignore it. But if your partner is on a holiday and you're on your own, and suddenly you hear a sound upstairs, immediately you're like, what the heck was that? And in both those situations, like the model free, like the sensory input is the exact same. Um, and so just how, yeah, basically how that plays out.
How does that
becomes so
work?
much more
How
salient.
does that
Yeah.
work? Well, I think that's a great. It's one of those cases like it's a good, thing to add to our suite of tasks that this thing has to explain. Right?
Because I feel I can just like on the surface, it feels like there could be either like a proactive one where like somehow our models are constantly kind of explain, this. I don't want to compare too much to predictive coding, but like our models are kind of explaining away or kind of expecting certain sensory inputs, and as long as those are consistent, they just kind of keep humming away. And it's when there's that mismatch they suddenly say, "Whoa, something's going on." Or it could be a more reactive one where all that sensory information comes in, we process it, and then we say, "Hang on, this doesn't fit." And yeah. Anyways.
I think in the case of the sound, it's like the first time I hear it, say, the first time, if I hadn't heard a sound in a while, my attention would be drawn to it, even if my partner was upstairs. And then I'd say, "Oh, what are they doing?" "Oh, they're going to take a shower," or they close the cabinet or something like that. But if the sound repeats over and over again in some period of time, then you don't notice it anymore. But
Yeah.
it would the first time you hear unexpected a sound like that, you would attend to it and then you'd go through a mental thought process like, "Oh, what could be causing it? Oh, my partner's upstairs," something like that. I'm saying I'm just adding some
I don't
flavor
know.
to it.
I hear quite a few sounds these days.
Yeah.
Some of them distract me from my work when the kind of model free salience is particularly high. But I think a lot of them I thankfully managed to ignore.
Mm,
But yeah.
yeah.